Good morning, guys. Thank you for joining me. And good morning, I suppose, if it's morning for you and you're in the relatively the same time zone as me. I've got a very special live stream for you today. We're going to be doing, I guess, an advanced English lesson because I have my dear friend and linguist, Wilson, joining us. We're going to be talking about memes in English, and we're going to be talking about profanity in English. So I want to warn you right now, if you have kids around or if there's someone in the room who's offended by curse words, cussing, profanity, we're going to be saying that. So I would get any kids out of the room. If you're not comfortable with profanity, I would maybe skip this one because we will be cussing during this live stream. All right. And it is my pleasure to now introduce Wilson. Wilson, I'm going to go ahead and let you join in here. Oh, I'll put you on the other side. There we go. How's it going?
It's going very well. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. I'm very happy to see you. We haven't seen each other in over a month.
Yeah.
And I always like talking with you. And thanks so much for coming on and sharing your expertise with us. I wanted to just start things off by having you explain what is a linguist, because a lot of my students
Sure.
won't know that word. So what is a linguist? What do you do? And what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so a linguist, right? The standard definition of linguist is essentially someone who studies language at the scientific level. Okay. And so, that could be categorized as language expert. There's different levels of linguist. You can be a theoretical linguist, right? So that means studying the theory of language basically for the means of analysis, right? Um, you could be a computational linguist. That's someone who specializes in training computers, right, to process human language. I, by traditional educational training, am a theoretical linguist, right? And so in linguistics, there are lots of different schools of thought that is, you know, broken down into different sections. So there's sociolinguistics, right? The social aspects of language and linguistics and interaction. There's things like historical linguistics, right? How language develops. Syntax, which is another word for grammar, essentially. There's phonetics, right? The ways in which the body structures we have allow us to create sounds that we can transform into or arrange into patterns, right? And transform as a part of our language to communicate. And of course, there are many more fields than that. By interest in training, I'm basically somewhat of a historical linguist, plus maybe a syntactician. I really like syntax. I really enjoy the union of syntax and semantics. Semantics is the study of meaning, where meaning comes from. But also, I love things like profanity, and I like what we would call computer mediated discourse. Computer mediated discourse, is how we communicate through computers. So emojis, right? Texting language would fall in there. And professionally, I do work in tech. I get into the computational type stuff, working in natural language processing, though I am a theoretical linguist by training.
That's quite a good explanation, I think. I think the most that I get into would be the phonetics, because a lot of my students are interested in how do I pronounce
Yes,
things like a speaker from the United States. So
sure.
I've gotten a lot into that, but all of the other stuff is the things that I find really fascinating, and hopefully what we'll be talking about today. By the way, I wanted to give a shout out to. Did you see the comments when I pulled them onto the screen?
I did. Yeah, I
Okay,
saw them.
yeah. So we've got Scott Reynolds says, "Sup, you handsome devil." I assume he's talking about you. So,
Oh, no.
sup, Scott. And then we've got Rada Rada, double two Radas, right?
Rita,
From
Rita.
Algeria. Thank you for joining us, Rada. And also we have Micah Robertson,
We
who's
know
tuning
Micah.
in. Yeah, I think we know this guy. Thanks for joining us. All right, so what are we going to be talking about first here, Wilson?
Well, first, I would really like to talk about memes. It's probably the tamer of the conversation. And memes are so popular, right? They really kind of exploded in what, let's say the last, it's 2021. Let's say at least the last like 11 years or so, kind of with the advent of Facebook, right? And the growing popularity of Facebook as a social media platform, memes really took off. And really, the way I think of them is in a metaphorical sense, right? So, one of my things is I'm trained in metaphor, um, and so that's what I would like to talk about today.
Could you quickly give a definition? What is a meme for anybody who isn't sure what that means?
Yeah, so a meme in general is probably going to be a single image, right? It's going to be an image based, but it could include pictures, it could include text, um, and basically it's going to be a box, right? It kind of has your typical square shape. You're going to see them all the time on social media, and essentially the purpose of the meme, yes. If you could Google actually the Boromir meme, that would be
Boromir
amazing.
meme?
Boromir meme,
Is that?
that would be
Oh, I
that's
know.
Lord
I
of the
know.
Rings. Yeah, one does not simply
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah, I love this one.
exactly, yes. So memes essentially are these little packages um, of information, of content, right, that transmit at the least some kind of idea, right? Um, a lot of times they are used to transmit like a comical idea, but sometimes they can transmit serious information, like medical information, like voting information. There's many different uses for them, but there's kind of a core original use and meaning, and really kind of tends to be a little more comedic.
Yeah, I've certainly noticed. I mean, I feel like an old man because I'm just now getting used to memes.
Mm.
But the only ones that I'm familiar with are the funny ones. I don't know that I've come across a serious meme.
Yeah, so this is where we might kind of branch out into what is a definition, right? And what exactly is a meme. But to me, a meme at its core, right? It's a genre of social media image, right? It's probably going to be an image plus text or an image of text, and there are a bunch of different kind of sub genres of memes. Um, and so whether it's comedic or more serious, right? Whether its purpose is to transmit a joke or share like real information, if it fits into that general schema of box, image, plus text, I think we can call it a meme. And if it's happening on social media, then definitely it's going to get there. Some might say only the funny ones are memes, but I'm not going to be so strict.
All right. So I feel like that's a pretty good definition. What did you want to get into regarding memes in the English language?
Yeah, so um, I think I said before, right? One of the things that I really like in language or linguistics is this idea of metaphor, right? Um, Metaphor is kind of a higher level of understanding or language use, right? Metaphors exist across all languages. Um, and I think in language teaching, right, which you're in, probably the simple definition is, or the simple example is saying something is something else, right? So like that man is a mountain, right? So it's figurative language, right? We're transforming our kind of stock meaning of the man, and the man is the mountain, and we're transforming it and we're adding an understanding of characteristics, right? So, what is a mountain? A mountain is a big pile of dirt, right? That's solidified into some large, very large geological structure, right? And so when we say the man is a mountain, um, we have this understanding of this huge man, right? He's probably very tall. He's probably got big muscles, right? He's going to be much bigger, much stronger, maybe even much more solid looking than your typical average man.
Yeah.
And if we take the mountain from Game of Thrones, right, who is a humongous dude,
Yes.
right, very strong and powerful, we can kind of see that metaphor at work. And what we see in the mountain would basically line up with our understanding of the sentence, the man is a mountain, right? We are importing our knowledge of what a mountain is, what essentially is mountain, and taking it over, and we're adding it to man in some kind of weird, complicated cognitive equation, right? And boom, we get, in theory, what we expect, right? He's not shaped like a mountain, right? He's not a triangle,
Yeah.
right? He
It's a
is
big
not made of
old hunk of
rocks.
meat, man.
Yeah, right. So that essentially is metaphor, and so the result of that is something that a man named Zoltan Kovetchis would say is the result of conceptual blending. You can see my camera. I've got his book right here. So in grad school, right, this is Metaphor by Zoltan Kovetchis. He is from the field of cognitive linguistics, right? So how does the mind and how is the mind structured? How does that relate to how we can use language, right, to understand things? Um, and so I have an interest in metaphor, but when I was in grad school, I realized that memes were doing a very similar metaphorical, kind of translation or connection, right? And so that's kind of where my interest lies. And I like to see how memes function in this cognitive, metaphorical sense.
So you're saying essentially that memes are like what would I say? They're creating a new sort of metaphor that rather than just needing to involve the language comparison, you have an image comparison that goes with it, and also the context of the film or the show or anything like that.
Yeah, so I don't think I would say that they create a new system of metaphorical understanding, but they take advantage of a system of metaphorical understanding that we already have and that we already use every day as human beings, but they tend to be used for a comical purpose, right?
Mm.
And they really are related to what? Social media, right? And so they're kind of this new example of a way that we communicate or share information with metaphor, which we already do every day, right? One of the underlying ideas of conceptual metaphor is that we use it all the time, right? And so this comes from George Lakoff, kind of the father of conceptual metaphor. And um, he's going to say that metaphorical language is in normal everyday language around us all the time, right? So the simple example, without getting off track too much, right, because I could talk about this forever.
Yeah.
If I were to say to you, Rob,
Mm-hmm.
um, how are you feeling?
Oh,
How are you doing? And you said something like, oh, um, I'm feeling really down. What does that mean
yeah. I'm feeling
in literal
down.
meaning?
It means I'm feeling kind of sad. I'm not doing my best right now.
Right.
Yeah, and just that word down, I guess. And also, you said you didn't want to get off track. What does that mean?
Okay, right. So let's do one at a time. One at a
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
Um, right. So if you're feeling down, right, there's this metaphor uh, that we have in English, right? And these are called orientational metaphors. So metaphors of understanding related to direction. Um, So in English and across many other languages, there's this idea that good is up and bad is down, right? And so if you're feeling down, then you're feeling sad, right? The emotion sadness is related to bad. Okay. If you were to say something like, I'm on cloud nine, what does that mean?
You're real high up. You're on.
Right. You're really good, right?
Yeah,
So
you're high up in the sky.
yeah, and what is cloud nine? Like who knows? There's no thing like cloud nine
Okay,
either.
so I'm gonna get to that. I don't know if you've been watching any of my videos lately, but I've been doing these idiom etymology
Oh right.
videos. So
Hmm.
I think I need to put Cloud Nine on that list because that's a
Yeah.
curious one. Like, why nine? Because
Yeah.
you would think maybe something like Cloud Seven because it might be related to heaven, and you've got the number
Sure.
seven. So where the heck is Cloud Nine coming from? I'm gonna get to
I
that.
have an idiom dictionary if you need me to come back
What?
and give you the answers to
Why
that.
do I not have this? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll probably see this in a couple of weeks or so, but I actually have you heard of idiomation?
No.
So idiomation.wordpress.com is where I've been getting a lot of my information as far as the etymology of these idioms. And
Okay.
I interviewed Elise Bruce, who created that website.
Oh.
And it wasn't a live interview just because of her internet connection wasn't very strong. But that'll be posted in a few weeks. Really cool
Fantastic.
lady, very fun conversations. But yeah, I want that book.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So, right, back to business.
Yes.
Another metaphor, but
Lo
just
siento.
simple, simple. Um, so there's this idea: good is up, bad is down, and so we can index all of these things like emotion, right, from this orientational directional metaphor, right? So if you're really happy, oh, I'm good, right? If someone is moral, they take the high road,
Mm.
right? If you are, maybe going through a really hard time in life, you've been dragged through the mud. Oh, I'm stuck in the gutter, right? There's this implicit directional metaphor in all those statements,
High
right? So,
class, low class.
yeah, exactly, right? Related to fiscal wealth, right? Absolutely. So, you look up to someone,
Mm. True.
right? They have some kind of social, you know, place above you, which
Yeah.
is better somehow, metaphorically at least. Get off track. There's another metaphor, right? This is life as a journey. So life is this thing that we're constantly walking through, which we are in a very literal sense, but we're always on a journey. So um, if we're getting off track, right, we understand that's a train metaphor, right? So trains, we know, only go one or two directions, right? They can go forward, they go backwards. Typically, though, they're mostly going forward, right? And it's a very directed way they go. They can change tracks, or whatever. But being on the track, we have this understanding of there's only like
This is
so
where
much.
we're going.
Yeah, this is where we're going
Yeah.
exactly. And so if you're getting off track, right, you're deviating from like a set route, right? And so that's an example of life as a journey as a metaphor.
Yeah, and I'm glad that when I mentioned that, I didn't derail the conversation.
Hmm. That's right. We're still within this track of metaphor talk, so it's good. We've got a wide track.
I mean, we could go forever on
Right. We can go
if
forever.
that's what
That's
we're
true.
meant to be doing.
So, so we have these metaphors in our everyday language, right? And since memes are kind of an everyday occurrence on social media, then logically, maybe we should expect, you know, there to be metaphorical instances there as well, right? So Zoltan Kovacic, right, is kind of where this idea of mind comes from. He's going to say, in part, right, that some of the work we do in metaphorical understanding comes from a blending of information, right? Kind of like I mentioned already earlier with the man is a mountain example, right? We have these kind of a key list of things that we understand a man to be, right? Um, it's going to be this and this and this and this, right? This is going to make a man, right? From a meaning perspective. Um, we understand a mountain to be a certain list of things, right? It's going to be this and this and this and this, right? And so when we are running this metaphorical, let's call it blend, right? A conceptual blend, in the words of Kovechis, we're taking some parts of each list, right? And we're blending them together, right? And so from this blend, we get this understanding of the metaphor, the man is a mountain, right? And so, like when we pulled up so let's just for a very simple example, right? We always got to do an example.
Yeah.
Um, what is a man? Well, a man's going to be a Homo sapien, right? He's going to have probably, have two legs, two arms, though that's not always the case. Okay, that's not always the case.
Yeah.
He's going to breathe oxygen, right? He's probably going to eat fruits, vegetables, meats, depending on what
His diet. He's gonna eat
his
something
diet
though.
is. Right, he's going to eat something definitely, and he's going to have blood inside him, a certain set of organs, he's going to have some general appearance, blah, 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 blah. That's the list, right? For mountain, like I already said, right, it's a geological structure. It's going to be very big, right? It's
Stable.
probably going to stable, right? It's probably going to be made of dirt and rocks and a variety of other things. It might have a typical shape, right? The triangle, that's kind of how we conceptualize in a typical image a mountain, right? A single mountain as like a triangle, or at least in that shape. And so when we say the man is the mountain, we're taking some kind of understanding from each list, right? So bring back up the picture of the mountain,
Yeah,
if you
sure.
could.
I've got it here. So
So here,
there's the mountain.
right? So the mountain, right? It's a really kind of a nice example. So here, right? He's at least from the eye test, right? It's definitely meeting the definition of like Homo sapien, right? Um, two legs, two arms, right? Probably breathes oxygen. He's got organs. He has a diet, right? But we are taking our understanding of what a mountain is, a literal mountain, probably in terms of the size, right? How we imagine sturdiness, right? Like what makes sturdiness. And those qualities are blending in to our understanding of man. And poof, here we have a man that is a mountain, right? Of course, he is the mountain. But, if you saw a man walking down the street who was big like this man or person, right? You could probably also say, gosh, that man is a mountain, and it would still work.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
he hasn't taken on the shape of the triangle, of the mountain, like I've noted. And so even though his shoulder muscles are very big, and
Yeah.
partially triangular, maybe in a way. Um, so here, right, is an example of how the blending is working, right, and how we can say that and how the metaphor works, because we're taking certain parts, we're blending it together, and poof, that that works. And that's an example of the blending at hand. So when we go to memes, right? My argument is that memes operate on conceptual blending. They are in themselves metaphorical. Um, and so if we look at the Boromir memes, let's analyze one and
Okay.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, let me find. Do you have anyone in particular that you're fond of that you'd like to look at?
Um, the Boromir meme is just a really nice one, because there's so many. Okay, and so because there's so many of them, it's kind of one of the classic original meme formats. Um, because there's so many of them, it just kind of gives even more credence to uh, the the idea that blending is at work. So anyone that just says one cannot simply
Okay,
do
I've
something.
got one. I think that'll work. Hopefully, I can get a bigger version of it. Ah. Okay, I got one. I got one.
Cool.
All right. One does not
Right.
simply get off the internet.
One does not simply get off the internet. Okay. Yeah, cool. So what's going on here? First, right? Obviously, like from a historical etymological sense, right? This comes from Lord of the Rings. Okay, this is Boromir. And the original line from the movie and or the book, right, is one does not simply
Walk into
walk
Mordor.
into Mordor, right? And so in this moment, the image, right? If we were to just see the image and kind of remove the text, right, we would, with a certain amount of knowledge, we would know what this moment is, and with the original line, we would know, okay, we would start building our list of knowledge about the image, right? And so what do we know about Lord of the Rings, right? So you do have to have some knowledge of Lord of the Rings for it to go. Boromir, of course, is one of the members of the Fellowship of the Ring, right? Who are tasked to take the One Ring to Mordor. Okay, and really, it's a lot of knowledge about the journey into Mordor and what Mordor is. So one does not simply walk into Mordor, right? Go into Mordor. Um, Mordor is kind of a faraway land, right? Surrounded by a mountain range. It's not easy to get there, and it is home, right, to the Dark Lord Sauron, and who commands a vicious army, right? It's basically the dark fortress of Middle Earth, right? So one does not simply walk into Mordor, right? You need an army to go in there.
The air
Um,
is poison.
Right, exactly. The water is swamp water. It's toxic sewage, sludge.
Yeah.
Um, and so we have all this information from Lord of the Rings. It's going to be impossible to go there essentially, right? And so what happens when you do something as simple as change the text, right? We have simply gone from one does not simply go into Mordor or walk into Mordor, and now it's one does not simply get off the internet. Okay, but why does that funny and how does it work? Well, what is our understanding of the internet? Well, of course, for you and me, we didn't always have the internet, right?
Yeah.
But the internet is a wide-ranging, right, networking capability. And really, it's everywhere. The internet used to be a very simple thing, right? It used to be on a computer. You had to dial in. It was a horrible noise to get on the internet, right? It was like you had to go to a certain place to like sit down and do internet,
Yeah, and
right?
when you were on, for you young folks, if you don't know, you would get on the internet. That means no one in your house can use the phone. And when I say
Right.
the phone, it's because you had one phone in your
One,
house. And if
yeah.
you were on the internet, you couldn't use the phone. It was either internet or phone.
Right. And some people would call the phone and it would kick you off the internet because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
phone was trying to come through on the same line. Yeah,
Seems
good
absurd
times.
now, but that
Right.
was the way it was. I mean, the internet was crazy. It's like, oh, of course we have to choose either the internet or the phone. Like, it's magic.
Right.
We're
Right.
just,
Of
it's
course.
magic.
But now, of course, the internet is so um, widespread, right? It's so easily accessible that. Um, oh, sorry if you're hearing my son call me in the background.
That's all right. He's
But
a real sweetie.
yeah, but so the internet now it's everywhere, right? It's and we can say, it's addicting, right? It's on our phones, right? It basically powers most of everything we do, right? And um whatchamacallit? Nobody. No, I can't. There's one outside.
Oh.
Yeah, Micah hated dial-up. um
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we didn't even have a computer when dial-up was like my family didn't have a computer. So I definitely didn't prefer it, but it was still like a miracle that the internet even existed, and now here we are live on the
Right.
internet, which is
Right. So
wild.
um, I'm trying to think how we want to do this. Right. So we have all of our understanding of the internet, how vast it is. Let me actually here. How about this? Let me go handle my son,
Yeah.
and you and or the people in the comments think up like some essential qualities of the internet today, right? And
Yeah.
then I'll be right back.
Yeah, feel free. Let me
Okay.
let me know when you're ready. I'll go solo for a minute here. All right, so the internet, and feel free to jump in, you guys, if you have anything to add, and also if you have any questions. Any questions that get posted in the comments, we will either address during the broadcast or at the end of the broadcast. We can do some Q&A for you guys. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, right now the internet has become quite important to me because I mean, here we are live, so this is what I do regularly as part of my work is doing Robert Teaches English. And then my other job, I tutor students live on the internet. So for me, it really does ring true that one does not simply get off the internet. I need it to pay the bills at this point, which is kind of wild. Not something I ever expected would be the case when I was younger. And it was just this sort of magical thing that was happening, and where you could go and talk to your friends on like in chat. Like we didn't even have text messages back then. If you wanted to text somebody, you had to go on the internet. I remember AOL. What was it? What was the
Same.
AOL?
AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah, AOL Instant Messenger. As soon as I had the internet, I remember like jumping onto AOL Instant Messenger and being like, "Oh, there's a cute girl in school. I know what her name is. Like, I'm gonna message
Right.
her."
Jessica underscore
Yeah,
sunshine or something.
yeah. Micah
Whatever.
says society has become dependent upon it. Yeah, I mean, I was just
Yes.
mentioning that I personally am dependent on it because it's my job.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
right now, this is a one of my jobs is doing Robert Teaches English, but my other job I teach online. So
hmm I do too. You know, my googling and tweeting have become verbs. Yeah, that's right. They're eponyms, right? And so that's a whole nother. Um, what other but yeah, so that will happen with time, right?
yeah,
Things how things become eponyms is its own interesting linguistic study.
have we
But
turned zoom into a verb yet? I'm gonna zoom you.
you know,
I'm gonna zoom with. Yeah, that's already happening.
it's possible. I would say, yeah, I would understand that, even if it's happening through like Microsoft Teams or some other platform, right? Um, that's definitely the kind of standard way of looking at an eponym. But, anyways, right, back to internet. What did you all come up with?
We didn't get too much. I mean, you kind of saw what I saw. So society has
Okay,
become dependent upon it. I mean, I'll bring them back up again. Googling and
sure.
tweeting have become verbs.
Mm-hmm.
It's my job. We're literally doing it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also just say beyond dependent, especially you young folks, I noticed you guys are constantly on your phones, and I know you're on the internet.
Right.
So I would even argue that it's become an addiction, a new addiction for a lot of people.
Yeah, it in some way has become almost essential to living, right? It's not it's not physiologically like oxygen, you know, where without it we'll die, you know, but it has gotten to a point where it's almost essential to do anything. Like for a lot of people, if they lost the internet, they wouldn't be able to work, right? They wouldn't be able to make money. They wouldn't be able to entertain themselves, right? So the internet has become so widespread, so a part of our fabric of living that to get off of it would be like walking into Mordor, right?
Yes. Now we get
Almost,
back to it. So, oh,
almost
I'm looking the wrong way. So,
impossible,
what does this
right?
mean?
Right. So we are in this meme. we are taking our understanding of the internet, right, as like the fabric, right, essential fabric of our lives, and our understanding of Lord of the Rings, right. In this meme, one does not simply walk into Mordor, and here we get one does not simply get off the internet, right. And so we attain and get and execute this blend, right, that gives us this metaphorical understanding of how hard it will be to, or how hard it is to get off the internet, right. And recently, when the, you know, Facebook social media platform went down for like 8 hours, right? There were a bunch of memes that came out about, you know, how people, how like productive people were at work, right? Um, you know, because Facebook was down or
Oh
because
my
Instagram was
gosh.
down, or, you know, and so one does not simply get off of Facebook, right?
Even while you're at work, apparently.
It's a good example of this, you know. Um, and or there was another one. It was like a house, little house on the prairie, right?
Ooh, let's see if we gotta find
And
this.
yeah, if you can find it, um, it's fresh and new. Um, little house on the prairie meme, I think, is what it is.
It, which one of these are we looking for?
Oh
Oh, I
no, I
remember.
probably described it wrong. But
No.
there's this picture of like, you know, a woman in like a prairie kind of colonial expansion type dress, and she's like running through a field, and then the caption above the image is um, 8 hours into Facebook being down, right? Like that. So with Facebook being down, like the major thing on the internet, and it being down for 8 hours, this person has reverted back to like a colonial, right? Very simple, um, right, lifestyle, like a
I
colonial lifestyle.
I didn't find that one yet. There's a whole bunch of what I'm noticing now is not only do you have like images that get repeated, but you have
Yes.
different words that are being repeated with different images. Because when I looked
Yes.
up, hold on, let me just bring it up here. 8 hours into Facebook meme, we've got, and Natalie, we'll get to your question in just a second. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's go through them. Let's go
Yeah.
through a couple, and we can see what's going on here.
So we've got walking into work 8 hours later. Speaking of profanity, what the hell was that shit?
Hmm.
um, yeah, I don't know if this is what you were talking about. Where's this
Right.
little
So
house in the
it was
prairie?
it was like a slew of random ones, right? And so this is one thing with memes. Only the really popular ones, like the really really popular ones that get used again and again and again and again, are like easily searchable. So like if you go back to the Boromir memes,
Yeah,
right, just to kind of get done with this point, if you go look at a bunch, like look at the collection kind of there, the three, it's like three next to each other.
this one. I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
yeah, we've got
Click
a
it.
few.
Right. So one does not simply call a taxi in Mordor, right? That one's kind of meh.
That one's
That one
not
falls a
very
little
good.
flat. But one does not simply hit the snooze button once.
That is
Yes,
very
I
true.
agree. I agree.
That one's very
Um,
true.
one does not simply say "I'm not hungry" to grandma. Yeah, that
Depending
works.
on your family
Depending on your
culture,
family,
yeah, I could see that
right?
one.
One does not simply take something off the internet. Yeah, sure, I could see that one. Um, one does not simply.
Carry all the laundry without dropping at least one sock.
Yes,
Yes.
accurate, right?
Yeah,
And
we've got
so
some good ones here.
and so what is happening with all these? So in each one, even though, right, in each one, we're taking our kind of essential understanding of Mordor, right, and Lord of the Rings and all the things that we know from the line, one does not simply walk into Mordor, and we're blending it with this other content, right? In sometimes more successful, sometimes less successful ways. And so the fact that we can use this meme over and over and over again and simply change out, let's say, the content that's on the bottom line of the meme, right? We're arriving at a new and different and unique understanding each time. Um, Some are funnier, some are less funny, whatever. That's kind of irrelevant. But the fact that we can do that across this one meme over and over and over again shows us that blending and metaphor is at work, right? And so if you're going really deeply into this, and this is something that I like to do, or at least like to think about in my brain and not talk about with anyone, because it might be weird, is one, what is, well, one, right? What is the kind of schema for a given meme,
Hmm.
like, and what's the purpose, right? And how is it being used, and which ways can it be used, right? There's some really common memes that get used for political reasons, right? um, if there's a really popular one, the guy pushing, he has two buttons to look at. It's like a cartoon. It's two red buttons, and it's a guy, and he's like sweating, and he's rubbing his head. You know, um, this one in particular commonly gets used for like political um, memes, right? With
Mm.
political,
I actually had never heard of that one before.
yeah, and all these memes have like particular names. If you look up like free meme generators, which I look up all the time because I like creating my
Meme
own memes.
generators?
Yeah, free meme generator.
Hold on, I
Um,
just found and I do want to get into profanity, so I'm pulling up some profanity
yeah,
here.
perfect. Right.
Be a dick,
So
don't be a dick.
right, and
Be a
so
dick.
when in meme format, this is in GIF format, right? Because it's moving. It's a moving image
Yeah.
essentially. But in the meme format, we'll see the top box, right? Oh, here, yeah, boom,
Yeah.
go to that one. That's a really good one. This is like your stock kind of everyday
Yeah,
example.
that's here.
Oh well,
Well,
up
yeah.
here in the corner, right? It's not censorship; it's localization.
Hmm.
Censorship Steven Universe censoring Steven Universe is homophobic. Okay, so this is the common format, right? Where you have like two political realities, let's call them, or like two political opinions, let's say, and then the image in below is going to be some political party, right, or some kind of entity, right, who
Okay,
is
yeah.
the choice between these two political decisions that seemingly, um, would prove, like, if you choosing one or the other would prove that you're not actually being your chosen like political body, right, or your chosen political entity,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, and I'm not going to bring up any specific ones here, but if you went and did your research, there's some really good ones about liberal versus conservative parties in America, right? There's a bunch of these about Trump supporters, and then there's a bunch of these about Biden supporters, or there's a bunch of that were just Republican issues, and a bunch of these about liberal issues, and
Yeah.
so it's fascinating to see that the same thing and the same schema, the layout, could be used so productively for two schools of thought which are essentially at war with each other, or oppose each other, or very
Yeah.
opposite,
Okay,
right?
so this is still funny, but we're getting into the territory of like maybe I actually care.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so, um, you know, just to make a blanket statement, you know, uh, the ones that are, let's say, shaming Republicans are going to be more funny, right, in theory, to the liberal sided a group of people, but then the ones making fun of the liberal side are going to be more funny to the Republican side, right? And so, in these kinds of political memes, of course, it's just a back and forth kind of bantering kind of thing. Um, Maybe the purpose is not so much comedy, right? But it's to call out like the illogical sort of ways of thinking about both parties, right? And we can get into politics and their thinking some other time, right? There's a lot of
Never.
linguistics in there,
I'll
but
never.
but yeah. So
All
I'm
right.
still just focusing on memes, right? And that
Yeah.
that is fascinating, right? And the way that we can repurpose and reuse again and again and again and again for these seemingly limitless uses is because of metaphor and conceptual blending,
All right.
I would say.
Wilson, what if I told you that we've already been at it for like 45 minutes?
I know. I just looked at the clock and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, this has been fun so far, though. We do have some questions. I'm going to say let's
yeah,
get to those. We'll do them at the end because I really want to get into profanity. And
yes,
I warned people that we would be cussing, and I feel
right,
like I've let them down. So shit, man.
yeah.
Fuck. Let's get into
Ugh.
it.
Let's get into
What
it.
did you want to talk about regarding profanity?
Okay, so profanity is a big love of mine. You know,
A big love of mine. All right.
yeah, it's amazing stuff. So I mean, I'm born and raised California from the Bay Area, right? And Bay Area maybe stereotypically is known for their own unique slang, even though lots of places, get slang and have idioms and all that stuff, regionalisms that pertain to their location. But I've always really liked slang language, right? But I've always really liked swearing. Swearing as a linguistic act, it's kind of, I mean, I think I started trying to swear in like the third or fourth grade, right? Or at least like testing it out, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember testing it
um,
out. It was like
yeah,
it felt like I don't know, like a dopamine hit like you would get
sure,
from skydiving or,
right.
having a drink.
It's exciting.
It
Okay.
is.
And so, I was always a swearer. I had no problem, saying shit or, and using swear words in a variety of ways, right? Um, and so in linguistics, right, um, we would say, right, if you're a linguist, right, no language is better than any other language, right? English is not inherently better than something like Mandarin or Spanish, right, or any other language,
Yeah.
right? And that is like a tenement. That's like a cornerstone idea to being a linguist. Yet, when I was becoming a linguist in grad school, I tended to find that there was some language that wasn't good enough, like for the academy, right, for higher education, and that
Oh.
was profanity.
Yeah, okay. I
Like
see where we're going.
there was this stigma within linguistics about talking about profanity, and that shouldn't make any sense if we're saying as linguists that
All language
all
is
language
equal.
is, yeah, exactly. So that
Yeah.
would mean that profanity is equal to, let's call it, formal or standard or regular everyday, non-profane language. They should be equal. But when I kind of saw or felt that, at least within the academy that I had seen, um, that it was kind of ostracized from analysis, this was a problem, right? And so this was something that I kind of wanted to investigate and try to resolve. Okay. And one of the big heavy hitters in profanity is this guy named Benjamin Bergen, right? And he writes, "What the F?" Um,
What the F? I love that he uses the
what
F.
what swearing reveals about our language, our brains, and ourself,
Hmm.
right? And so, coming at it from a linguistic standpoint, profanity or swearing is something that is cross linguistic, right? Like all languages have it. We have these exclamations, right? Outbursts, and words that mean like naughty things or are taboo, right? Like children can't use them. It's a taboo,
Yeah.
right, for children to use them. And so when you start using it, it's like this liberating, kind of exciting thing. Um, but also, there is language, right, that is profanity based, which is not necessarily being used as a curse, right, or a slur or as a swear. So, you know, if I were to say something like, let's do shit as an example, right? If I were to say, um, if I were to stub my toe on something and say shit, you know, that's a very standard exclamation, right? Um, we could probably call it a curse there, right? If I were to tell someone, "Hey, you're shit," right?
Mm.
That's definitely like a swearing kind of thing. Where does it come from? It comes from our understanding of poop, right? Shit is another word for feces.
What if I
Um,
told you you were the shit though? Man, you're the
right.
shit.
Yeah.
If you
So,
as soon as you put the definite article in there, it's all of a sudden a
right.
compliment.
The shit.
You're the
Right.
shit.
The shit. In that context, right? It means you're really cool
Mm-hmm.
or really good. And so we would probably say that that's a slang usage, right? So how do we go from the profane to the non-profane,
Mm.
right? Even though it's literally the same lexical item, right? And where did that understanding come from, right? How do we get there? Well, for shit, that's its own linguistic, you know, uh, investigation that I have not done, but I'm sure it's fascinating.
If
Um,
you want to investigate shit with me sometime, you let me know.
I
I'd be happy
should.
to do
Yeah, we
so.
should. We really
We could
should.
do another video. We'll do one like not
Right.
live. We could just get really into the
True.
shit. We'll get into the
Right.
shit.
So another really good example is fucking, right?
Yeah.
So, well, fucking, right? We can say fuck, in the same manner that we would say shit after stubbing our toe, right? Um, you could call someone a fuck. That's kind of like an asshole,
You
right?
fuck.
You fuck, right?
Yeah.
Um, you could also, fucking is also right the a verb, right, for the act of sexual intercourse,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's probably its corest meaning, right?
Yeah,
Its most
that's
traditional
the
meaning,
actual
right?
meaning
Yeah,
of the original word.
etymologically,
Yeah.
right. It's another word for sexual intercourse, right? But we have all these other ways we can do it. If I'm telling you a story and I was like, oh, I was at a party and fucking this guy came up and he started talking to me and what was fucking doing there, right?
Pregnant pause.
Yeah. So in a
You're
conversational
using,
sense,
yeah, for, and it would be like for the students who don't know what I'm talking about, using It's just
yes,
a filler word when you aren't sure
exactly,
what to say. So,
exactly. That's exactly what
fucking,
we
I
call it.
haven't
We
seen
would
you
call it.
forever, man.
Yeah, right. Fuck.
Yeah.
um, so it is a filler, right? It's a word we're using in a conversational sense to tell any listeners that we are retaining control of the conversational floor. I need another minute. I'm thinking of the words that are coming next, right? So it's not a swear there, even though it's profanity based,
Yeah.
right? It's not swearing and
There's
it's not a
nothing
curse.
rude about it.
And actually, it almost has no meaning,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, the word doesn't have meaning. It's just I'm not done talking, but
It's
I
a
don't remember what I'm supposed to say yet.
right.
Yeah,
It's a signal, essentially. It's a pragmatic particle, we could call it if we wanted to get really crazy on it,
let's get
right?
crazy.
So how do these things go from being inappropriate, right, and profane with all this meaning to these things that maybe have a very different meaning, like the shit, right, or almost no meaning at all, like fucking as a
Mm-hmm.
filler, right? How does that happen? So I did my own investigation into the word ass, right? So in grad school, right, I was sitting around one night. I was in semantics class, which is the study of meaning. But I was taking a semantics class and I was sitting at home and I was watching The Daily Show. And I think it was Trevor Noah, but it was prior to the 2016 election. That's when Donald Trump got elected president. And there was a panel or a little short, right, where someone was doing an interview with African American Republican voters, right, who were seemingly self identified as very Republican, but they didn't want to vote for Donald Trump,
Mm.
right? Okay. And the line was something to the effect of now we're going to go off and talk to some Republican ass voters about the upcoming election. And
Republican ass voters.
right. And so, me being a syntax guy, I'm always listening to things and drawing phrase structure trees in my brain. For those of you that know what phrase structure trees are, um, but I sat there and I was like, First, it was syntactic, and I was like, "Gosh, ass. what is ass even doing there, right? And so I drew the phrase structure tree in my brain. I was like, well, it's acting as an intensifier, right? Or what we would call a word like very, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, or really, right? They're adverbs of something that I can't remember right now, and I should remember. But another word for these is intensifiers, right? It's an adverbial word, right? It's seemingly modifying an adjective, right? And it's giving it some kind of extra meaning. So syntactically, that's what it was doing. And then my next question was, well, I can understand the the meaning of ask there is very. What they were saying is some very Republican voters, about the upcoming election.
Yeah.
And my next question was just how or why is it ass? Like how did ass get there? And I had used ass in that way, adverb of degree, right? That's the phrase. How did that happen, right? And so that opened up the whole wormhole, and I ended up doing my thesis on ass as an intensifier, um, and it was all just from that one little moment. And so basically, what happens in this case, and what happens with ass, I would argue that it's something very similar as to what happens with words like fucking or shit, the shit, these kind of profanity based words that get used in a variety of ways. They go through something called grammaticalization. Okay, and grammaticalization is historical linguistic theory. Okay, um, it's cross linguistic. All languages like have grammaticalization um, to some greater or lesser extents, but grammaticalization is the process of going from what we would say are open words. All right, so we have two different classes of words, right? We have these open words class and we have this closed words class. Open words are being reinvented all the time, right? They're nouns and verbs, right? Essentially, adjectives, um, things that can come in of use, come out of use. We can make a new one very easily, right? We can use Google as a verb, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. Um, Open words are kind of always evolving and always changing, right? And then we have these closed class of words that it's really hard to add a new member to. These are going to be things like article, right? A and the preposition,
Prepositions. Yep.
in, out, on, blah, blah, blah. So these words, these closed class words, tend to have a more grammatical function, right? There isn't so much of a content function and meaning, even though they can have their own meaning, but they happen in very strict, very frozen kind of uses
Yeah.
where nouns can always be like rechopped and reused and like mixed together and all this kind of stuff. And so grammaticalization is the process of going from an open class word to a closed class word. And so when something goes from open class to closed, that process is called grammaticalization. And there's all these things that happen. So, and there's all these steps that need to be set up uh, prior to grammaticalization even happening. And so in my thesis, this is what I investigated, right? Ass. How did ass grammaticalize, right? How did it go through grammaticalization from an open class word to a closed class word? So when we're talking about ass, right? What do we know ass to be to you? Like,
But are we talking about the noun ass now?
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So ass
Right. So it's a
is
noun. That's important.
ass is originally a noun. It means your butt, your bottom, your tush.
Yeah. What else?
Um, if we are we getting into before the intensifier?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We
Yeah,
have to
so
think through
because
it
there's a
all.
lot of different uses of ass. So other
That's
than
right.
being an intensifier, you've got it's not a good thing sometimes. It could be
Uh-huh.
like, that tasted like ass.
Yes.
Which you don't
So
want
that
to, yeah.
Right.
or ooh, like smells like ass.
So those are all related to the body part, right? The anatomical body part. Yeah.
Yeah.
We also know an ass to be a donkey,
Ooh,
right?
ooh, right, right. I forgot about the
Ass is another
donkey.
word for donkey.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is actually its original sense. That's from circa 1000 AD, right, or
Wow.
AC, according to the Oxford English Dictionary. Okay, and of course from William Shakespeare in the 1500s, Nick Bottom, right, is
I
the
am an
ass.
ass. Yes.
I am an ass. What an ass I am, right?
Yes.
um, and we also get
Nick Bottom.
mhm, mhm.
Bottom.
We also get the sense of someone is an ass, like a
Yeah.
foolish dolt,
If you're
you
ass,
know.
you're foolish.
Hmm.
You're like a. I don't know why donkeys are so foolish, but if you're an ass,
Right,
you're foolish. You're a joker.
right.
But
Yep.
then if you're an asshole, all of a sudden
Yes.
you're not just foolish. You're actually a jerk.
Mean jerk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're a
Um,
mean. Usually, a mean man is an
right.
asshole.
And so we go from donkey, right, to like silly person, right? Asshole, even, right? A more profane use. Um, and then we get the anatomical body part. That
Hmm.
happens in like the 1800s. This is all my thesis. So
So
I'm just
so
reading.
the body part, does the body part come after the silly person?
Yes, yes, it
Wow,
does.
that's
Much,
interesting.
much later, a couple hundred years, I
Wow,
think, like
wow.
300 years or something. And then eventually we get, because now ass has become a body part, right? Then we get um, the the metonymical use. So metonymy, right, is another metaphorical way of understanding something. Okay, so when I say I got some ass last night,
Oh,
what am I saying?
yeah. You had sex with somebody.
I had sexual intercourse. That's right. Okay, and so in this case, right, even though ass is um, not necessarily the way sexual intercourse has happened, though I'm not going to go into much more detail than that, right? We can say I got some ass last night, and that means I had sex.
Hmm.
Okay, that's an instance of metonymy because a body part in the region, or that is can be a part of the act of sex, is now standing in for that word,
Yeah.
sex. Right? So that's metonymy. Okay, and so polysemy is the is the phenomenon of a word having more than one meaning. Poly meaning many, sem, right, meaning from semantics, so many meanings, polysemous. And so first, a word has to have many meanings, right, and somewhat kind of divorced meanings, like unique and different, though related. We can kind of trace the relation there. Okay, so first a word has to be polysemous, then it has to become metonymic, right? It has to be able to have that kind of interchangeable metaphorical understanding. And once we get a word that has this kind of metaphorical understanding, we have set the groundwork and set the foundation for grammaticalization.
Mm.
Okay. Because once something is metaphoric, then we can start using it in a variety of ways, right? And so the Oxford English Dictionary is going to say that the first use of ass as an intensifier happens in World War II.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. Hmm.
it's fairly
So,
recently.
yeah, 1940s. Okay. So it's only been around, for less than 100 years, let's say. Even though ass has a long history that's over 1,000 years, right? It took 900 plus, give or take, years for it to go from noun to intensifier, right? Adverb of degree. And so the examples from the Oxford English Dictionary are, and the explanation of the etymology is that in World War II, right? World War II was the first instance where African American soldiers and white or Caucasian soldiers, right, were like unsegregatedly housed together, right? And so African American Vernacular English, AAVE, is a dialect of English, right? Um, and it's probably the second most common dialect of English in America. Um, so AAVE is mixing with non AAVE, right? And in theory, AS as an intensifier was, you know, probably already existing within AAVE, but the example that the Oxford English Dictionary gives is that naval naval um, officers, right, or soldiers would call um, female Marines with big butts BAMs, big assed Marines. Okay, they would call them
Okay.
BAMs. So assed though, ASSED,
Yeah.
with that past participle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so we know that asked with the ed, the past participle morpheme, right, derivational morpheme, right, has the ability to make something change
Yeah, so
from,
some more common expressions would be like big, big-headed. You know,
or a very simple one is like baked, right?
baked.
Baked
Yeah,
good, right? Goods that went through the process of baking,
yeah.
right?
Whenever you're
Baked.
using the verb form to create an adjective,
Mhm. Exactly.
I'm
so
confused. Somebody confused you. You're confused. Yeah.
So it's a derivational process, right? We're changing the part of speech with this ed, right? So here we get BAMs, big assed Marines, okay? Taking the noun, right? And transforming it into an adjective, right? Or in the phrase big assed, right? Um, so then from there, um, they same officers, right, naval soldiers, would refer to planes with really large tail sections as big assed birds,
But still with
right?
the ed at the end.
So with the ed,
Okay.
right? Okay, and so here, right? But it's still the same word, asked, right? And so what's happening when you're calling a plane a big assed bird? Well, bird is another word for a plane, right? But it's obviously a metaphorical situation, right? Because one, we're calling a plane a bird, right? It's obviously not a bird, but it's flying like a bird, right? So here we are, conceptual blending. Um, and we're importing our understanding of the human body onto the plane, right? Again, another metaphorical action. Okay, and so big ass bird. Okay, makes sense. And then the next entry is a policeman's big ass nightstick,
And here, no
right?
ed.
No ed, right?
Okay. Now
And
we're getting there.
so yeah, so it's a like a quick logical progression, right? So from bam, big ass marine, to big ass bird, right? You're saying essentially with that ed addition, right, and big, okay, in there, that that rear end is very large, right,
Mm-hmm.
or that tail section is much bigger than normal, okay. And so then, because humans like to be efficient in language use, um, someone saw a big old nightstick, a nightstick that was bigger than what should be considered the normal size of a nightstick, and there, boom, it became big ass nightstick.
Yeah.
Okay, we lose the ed, right, but ass in that sense kind of retains its meaning of more than expected,
Yeah.
right?
And it's no longer just referring to one part. The nightstick
Yeah,
is big in general. And
right.
when I
And it's
think
not.
of ass as
Mhm.
an intensifier, I think big ass. Like, that's a big ass guy. The
Yeah,
mountain
right.
is a big ass guy.
That's right.
It,
He is. But
but
we've
it
also
does get,
lost
yeah.
we've lost that kind of anatomical underlay,
Mm hmm.
right? If I say, "Man, it's a cloudy ass day outside," I'm not thinking about body parts at all,
Nope.
right? Oh man, that was a stupid ass movie, right? Like, we're not there. All we know is really or very, right? And so when it became big ass nightstick, right, it transformed. It went from open to closed, right? It became something with a more grammatical function, which is really hard to do, but we did it with ass.
Woo!
Okay, yeah. Okay,
Success.
cool. So then from there, it's like, how does it get used? Which ways are appropriate, right? Which ways are inappropriate? How can it be done? How can it not be done? Because there is a right and wrong way to do ass. Okay, and so I investigate all of this in like my thesis, and I come, to the conclusion, right? Well, first, or like I was probably so my thesis was like supposed to be a one-stop shop for ass, the word, right?
A
And
one-stop shop for ass.
it was supposed to be,
Sorry.
the most comprehensive document that had ever looked at that word,
Yeah.
right? So I went from the beginning. I kind of put all of this past research that had been done on it that was sporadic and very, you know, kind of all over the place, and I put it in order, right? I was able with the theory of grammaticalization to put it all in order and say, no, this is how it happened, right? This is how it goes from this to this to this to this to this. And I was essentially able to unite a lot of the existing research on it into a kind of a logical timeline, right? And so, in a historical perspective, that happened. And then, as a linguist, right, it's my job once I figure that out to say, okay, how can it be used today, right? What are the right and wrong ways to do it, or what are the common patterns it occurs in, right? And so, I began investigating, right, and I collected all this data, and obviously, yeah, it's going to, occur as a modifier of adjectives, right? It's always going to be after the adjective, typically, which is unique, right? And like, how did that happen, and why is it after? Because we can't say that's a green very house. We
Yeah.
have to say that's a very green house, right? That's the pattern.
You accidentally said something earlier though. You said a big
Uh-huh.
old nightstick. So it's being used in the same way that old is used. A big
Right,
old it's a cloudy
right.
old well,
And
that one's
so
weirder, yeah.
this is another, right, it's cloudy old day, right? So some metaphorical language has like these packets, right, that can just be used in unison, right? They're collocations, they're collocative, right? They belong together, and we can't always separate them and use them elsewhere. Like big ol', right, is a
Mhm.
common one. But if I said crazy old,
Crazy old works, but
yeah,
what I
crazy
said like a
old,
cloudy old, like you would never say
cloudy
it's a
old,
cloudy old day. A
I don't
cloudy
know.
ass
At
day
least it's not
works.
part of my regional
Yeah, but
dialect,
big
right?
old, crazy old, that's another one to explore.
there's a
Wow.
certain there's a certain group, right, where
Yeah.
it's appropriate, and then you can't. Um, and so I was investigating and I was looking, and one thing about profanity and grammaticalization in general is that it can break the rules, right? Profanity is not your standard stuffy, boring language. It can kind of do what it wants, and that, from a linguistic sense, is fascinating, right? And so, in the collection of right, data that I had, I ended up finding some really tricky examples, right? So, one of my great examples, right? I was at a party and someone was talking about some ticket buying website, which I won't disclose, so they
Okay.
don't get sued or something, right? But they said, excuse me, they said this ticket buying website has a hella shit ass way for purchasing tickets.
Whoa.
And I heard this and I was like, yes, this this is what I need,
Oh my gosh.
and so just looking at that noun phrase, a hella shit ass way for buying tickets, like, oh my god, there's so much gold in there, right?
Shit ass
One,
way.
hell is in there. Hella can also be used as an intensifier. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
um, Ass is obviously in there, right? Seemingly
As an
as
intensifier,
as an
yeah.
intensifier. It's happening in its normal slot, right, on a modifier of a head noun. Okay, way is the head noun. Okay, but shit, is shit there an adjective?
Uh, let's see. It's a hella shit ass way. Yeah, yeah, definitely, because it's a shit way. It's not a good way. So shit is your adjective in that
Right.
sense. Yeah.
But in syntactic theory, right, we might say shit could be a noun acting as an adjective,
Well,
right?
yeah, yeah, because originally it would be a noun.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Originally, it would be a noun, right? So maybe there it is an adjective, sure,
Yeah.
right? Um, but it brought up this question. It was like, could ass modify nouns that are being used adjectively? Because in syntax, even if something is being used adjectively, we might say that it's actually still a noun. Okay. So like if I say like a popular basketball player, this is a real example too,
Yeah, yeah.
that I've seen in real life. Um, Luka Doncic, right? He's a basketball player for the Dallas Mavericks. Um, he has some crazy plays and whatnot, and really superstar. And I saw this meme one time that said, you know, something about one of his dunks. This dunk was done in such a Luka Doncic ass way.
Oh, it included ass again.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it's like, boom, there it is, right? That Luka Doncic, that's a proper noun. Okay,
Yeah.
right? That's a noun. Um, and there was a really good example I sent you not that long ago, right? Listen to this. I hate I've never seen Harry Potter ass muggle, right?
Yeah.
So what the heck is going on there? So clauses or sentences can be used nominally, right, as nouns. And so in that sense, um, ass is modifying a clause that's standing in nominally and being used adjectively, right? But I couldn't say, um, or maybe I could, like that's a very Luka Doncic way. That's a very shit way. I hate a very I've never seen a Harry Potter, muggle. Um, it's not as effective, I would say.
Yeah, the
As
ass definitely adds something to it. But
right.
I am also very familiar with, like, oh, like that was a really Wilson thing you just said.
That's right. Exactly.
It's a Wilson
So
ass phrase. Yeah.
so if ask can modify nouns, right, in the way that a regular adverb or degree would, then it has some extra special ability, right? And something special is going on there. And so this is actually part of grammaticalization theory. So once a thing has become grammaticalized, it will have a variety of uses, okay? And it will kind of expand in its ways of being used grammatically as a closed class word before solidifying into one very specific grammatical thing, right? And so we have the common phrases dead ass, right? Dead ass was really hot when I was in grad school. It's kind of a Northeasty thing, but of course, because of the internet, right, it's become much more pervasive. And so it really just means really, but it comes from the phrase dead ass serious,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. I
You say
am
like
dead ass
dead ass
serious.
serious, okay, or then it used to be in adverbs like dead ass serious. I just saw this guy die,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then you lose this. Then you lose the serious dead ass. I just saw this guy die. And so
Wow.
dead ass. There's all this stuff on the internet about dead ass, and there's research into it, right? Here, ass seemingly is still doing a kind of intensifying thing, but it's a part of this like adverbial compound, right? It's definitely compounded in dead ass,
Yeah.
like, but it's an example of a different use of this grammatical element, right? This closed class element, and then another example is going to be like seemingly the ability to modify nouns. You know, and I had a collection of potential noun modification examples in my thesis, right?
Did you get
And
into
so,
broke ass?
no,
Cuz
well,
I'm
there's
noticing broke
probably
ass,
some.
you could say like he's a broke ass, whatever.
Mhm.
Or you could say he's a broke ass, and then broke ass becomes a compound noun.
Right. So in that sense, it's another meaning of ass, and it's again metonymy, where ass, the body part, is standing in for the whole person. So if you call someone a dumbass, it's a person that is dumb,
Yeah.
right? A stupid ass, a punk ass, right? A person that is a punk, right? So yeah, another compound sense, right? But yeah, absolutely nominal. But that actually comes before that use in the noun compound comes before as becomes an intensifier, which
Okay.
is in my thesis, I'm pretty sure.
Cause
But
yeah, but even dumbass, like either you're a
right,
dumbass or you're a dumbass person.
yeah, right. But seemingly similar appearances or
Yeah.
structures, but different meanings,
Okay.
different classes of word and all that stuff. So, long story short, ass is still kind of functioning within this realm of grammaticalization, right? But I posit that eventually it will become probably something close to a derivational suffix, right? It's going to be something that takes nouns potentially and turns them into adjectives derivationally, just like ed did in asked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we can see ass as an intensifier still existing and working in these other contexts, right, outside of just intensification, would show us that it's still kind of figuring its way out through grammaticalization, and that it's not done. But when something grammaticalizes, it will always have a final end form. And we're just not there yet. So we're in this really beautiful period of being able to track where ass is still going, right? And eventually, in theory, someday we'll see its like final form, at
Mm.
least where the intensifier's final form is. And I posit in my, you know, thesis that it's going to become something more like a derivational suffix.
Very cool. Yeah, and I'm thinking about like different ways I can use it. Like if I were eating
Yeah,
a soup and it was very heavy with jalapenos, I'd be like, "This is some jalapeno ass soup. It's
yeah, very
very
much.
very jalapeno-y."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, see, look, and there you have to add the y, right? The derivational y, or you don't have
yeah.
to,
To
but you did to
showing
make
it like
the
it's using
noun
doing the
an
same
adjective,
thing as ass in this
right?
case.
So maybe potentially in these instances where ass is modifying something that's seemingly a noun, right? Or at least is noun like syntactically through etymology, right? Um, it's picked up this other ability. It's picked up this ability to derive, right? And maybe um, maybe in that sentence, I hate. I've never seen Harry Potter ass Muggle. It doesn't really mean very.
No,
Like it
no.
really is just saying I hate a Muggle, right? A person that's never seen Harry Potter, and ass maybe there is just deriving. So that could be the instance we're looking for and the instance that I predicted,
Very
right?
cool.
In my thesis. And so we had to go through all that shit to get to
What I
that.
wonder is because it took you said 900 years for it to get here.
Right.
Like in another, I don't know, 500 years, is it even a curse word anymore, or is it just is it
I don't
just
know.
acting as you know, what was the word if it turns a noun into an adjective, a
Oh,
derivational
derivational suffix.
affix or
Yeah,
suffix?
the affix. Yeah, is the
Well,
more
affix would be
linguistic
prefix or suffix, right?
right suffix. Right.
Very cool.
So I would guess that the other things probably aren't going to go away because ass is such a lovely word. Though they could, they easily could. We don't always get to control what happens in linguistics and where words go and how things happen.
Never.
I would hope it stays around because I have such a love for it and I invested so much time into it. Um, but yeah, so I think the main takeaway though is, even though it's cool to, right, look at swearing and profanity based words and see where they come from and figure them out, not only is this cool, but as a linguist, right, I think it's necessary, right? And as a linguist, if no language is better than any other language, then we shouldn't be afraid of looking into these words and looking at these words, because there is a real linguistic reason that it is the way it is, right? There's a history to it, there are patterns to it, and there are things that should be figured out, because as linguists, this is kind of our job, you know, and maybe not even job, but responsibility. And if you're a linguist who actually believes that no language is better than another language, then you should be absolutely fine with looking into profanity.
I feel like
And
that's a Steven Pinker ass perspective.
yeah, yeah, it could be. Yeah, Pinker for sure. It's definitely a Bergen ass perspective. You
Yeah.
know, when I was writing my thesis, I was kind of like maybe the dark sheep, the black sheep, right? No one had ever really done anything like that before, and people were like, "Oh my God, that's so crazy! Can you really do that? Are they going to allow you to do that?" And it was like, "Yeah, they're going to allow me to do it." I had a really cool advisor, who allowed me to do it. Um, but I remember at one point, like, I would walk down the hallway and people would go like, "Hey, there's the ass man," and people who didn't know would be like, you know, "Who's this guy?" you know, outside of a certain context, they had no, they thought, "Man, this guy must be really popular with the ladies or whatever," right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but yeah, I am the ass man. So if you, the word, right? If you ever need to know about
I'm gonna
profanity,
take that clip and just put it at the very beginning out of
sure.
context. I am the ass man.
Hmm. Right. So that's that, and that's profanity. And profanity or profanity-based language is not always bad, I would say. You
No,
know,
no.
um, and especially for people using language, right? Learning how, from applied linguistic sense, right? Something like this could be important, because learning how to use profanity, right, or profanity-based language properly is kind of a mark of, right, a native
Of a
speaker,
native speaker, yeah.
right?
If you want to, if you're striving to sound more like a native speaker, and I could go on for hours about how there's no such thing as a native speaker, but that's another video altogether. Being able to use profanity in the way that native speakers of whatever country or region you're aiming for use, yeah, definitely something to take note of if you're comfortable using it, because some people just
Right.
aren't. It's just not a
That's
part
true.
of their character.
That's very true.
Yeah,
And
it's a
it's not
choice.
for everyone. It's not for everyone, but it's definitely for me. And
It's definitely
there
for
are
me.
lots of people, linguists and non-linguists out there, who love profanity and love profanity-based language. It's so expressive. So I would say absolutely use it. If you're comfortable with it. But yeah,
All right. Well, I mean, this is, I think, a good time as any to kind of wrap things up. We've been going longer than I imagined. Not that
yeah,
I care. Uh, I've been having a good time. And I did want to quickly address any of the questions. There was one in particular. So let's take a look here. So this was talking about what is going on linguistically when existing words like aesthetic and clout get new context because of internet culture.
So I would just say that's an instance of polysemy, right? It's an existing word with one or a couple understandings being used in a new context, and being given new meaning, right? So it's just going through, a standard linguistic operation of becoming polysemous, right? And that's how these things work naturally, right? Naturally. Um, you have an understanding of something, and then you use it in a new way, and at least part of that understanding comes through, but you add on something new to it, and voila, you have like a new definition, a new place that it can be used. And this happens all the time. um, like one of my favorite ones that is something very similar like this is the word thirsty,
Oh,
right?
yeah, that's a
It
good one.
comes from internet culture, right? Thirsty used to just mean right? You need to quench, right, your thirst. You need a drink of water. You need some kind of sustenance, right? And then internet culture came about, and maybe it wasn't necessarily because of the internet. It could have been an age related phenomenon, but it became a slang term for what? Someone
Horny.
who really wants sex, yeah,
Yeah.
who's horny, right? And so they want to quench the thirst for sex
Sex.
instead
Yeah.
of liquid, right? And so boom, right? Very standard kind of everyday thing,
Yeah,
right?
I think because normally you would have some subculture that has their slang, and maybe it gets picked up, maybe it doesn't. But with
Mm-hmm.
the internet, it's we can see it happening very rapidly. So I
Yes.
think even a non-linguist, just somebody who's observing the world, would notice this linguistic
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon taking place, whereas you wouldn't normally see that because it's
And
happening
then it's
at such a
right.
big level so quickly because of the internet.
And because the internet is so widespread,
Hmm.
it can go faster, quicker, right? Farther, quicker. Um, but again, kind of the linguistic force of what stays and what goes is still at work, and that hasn't changed. Like, for a while, you would say some things like on fleek, right?
Mm.
Um, and you could still say that, but I would think it's not as popular as it once was, right? There was kind of a golden age for it, let's say. I
It's like
think,
fashion. It's like
mhm,
clothing.
yeah, it's on fleek. It's on point. Like it looks really good, um, and you can still say it, but I would say it's not as widespread as it once was, right? Um, other words like finna, like I'm fixin' to. Um, I would say that one probably has retained. I think you can still say it, but frequency, of course, is hard to measure and whatnot. But what comes, and what stays and what goes, that's just, you know, how language
Yeah,
works.
it all reminds me of like fashion, art.
Yeah.
I guess you could throw music in there too, but it almost I don't know. Music's more intentional because you've got specific bands and stuff, but like certain haircut styles and things like that.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, that's a good question. But I would just say, you know, um, it's cool that it's happening, but I would say it's boring old polyphony.
All right. Well, it's been a good hour and a half here.
Yeah.
Thank you again for joining us. I knew this was going to be a fun conversation, and it was. And yeah, if you'd like to do it again sometime with a different topic, that might be something. Well, definitely something I'm interested in. If you guys are interested in these more advanced English lessons where we're talking about linguistics and really getting into it, let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching. And Wilson, thanks
Oh,
again. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let myself go. And everyone have a glorious day.
thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Ta ta.
Ta ta for now.
All right, we are officially